Happy America Day, everyone! Girl, you looking good for 247. Don't look a day over 235. There are three things I like to do for 4th of July. Watch About Us fireworks show, make my famous bean dip, and watch Independence Day for the 400th time. This really is one of those movies I don't ever get tired of watching. No matter how many times I see it, I enjoy it just as much as I did the first time. It's got Will Smith in his prime, Jeff Goldblum at his Jeff Goldblumist, a bunch of buildings getting blown to smithereens, and one of the best damn rousing speeches in movie history.
Today, we celebrate our Independence Day.
Now, ever since this movie came out in 1996, it has had its naysayers. There are those who say it's cliched and jingoistic and stupid as hell. With all due respect, these people are wrong and they hate America. Independence Day might actually be a perfect movie. Now, if you're a big ol' snob, you probably recoiled at that. Independence Day, a perfect movie. I just know anything about movies. But I am here on my country's glorious 247th anniversary to stand up to snobbery. Roland Emmerich's Independence Day does not miss a beat. It does every single thing it sets out to do, and for that, it deserves to be celebrated. So, what even makes a movie good or bad? Well, I went to movie school, so I know the objectively correct answer to that. Let's analyze Independence Day according to several well-known metrics for analyzing cinema quality and see how it stands up. You might have heard of a little thing called three-act structure. Now, this is pretty advanced theory, but basically it's the idea that good stories are broken into three parts. The first act, the second act, and the third act. Also known as the beginning, the middle, and the end. Like I said, very high-level stuff. In the first act, we're introduced to our characters in their ordinary world until the inciting incident occurs, the event that kicks off the story. The characters then react to the inciting incident and begin their journey toward accomplishing their goal. In the second act, characters attempt to reach their goal. This is usually the longest and most complicated act, and it's where the most things happen. Characters attempt to reach an objective, they encounter obstacles on the way, they interact with other characters, they learn lessons and go through development, and they probably go through a bunch of fun scenes that are the reason you went to the movie in the first place. And at the end of the second act, it all goes horribly wrong and the characters come this close to failure. But in the third act, they pick themselves up, learn whatever lesson they need to learn, complete their character growth, and accomplish their goal. Or sometimes they don't, if the story's a tragedy. But usually they do. Now, a lot of films make you study the screenplay like a historian of ancient lore looking for where the precise act breaks are. Not Independence Day. It serves them right up to you in handy title cards. July 2nd, Act 1. July 3rd, Act 2. July 4th, Act 3. Let's go through these acts. Independence Day has an unusually long first act because it has a lot of characters to introduce and a lot of tension to build. The inciting incident happens immediately. Great big alien spaceships arrive at Earth and sit their asses right over major cities. We're introduced to our key protagonists as they react to this news. Thomas Whitmore is the President of the United States, David Levinson is a satellite TV technician living in New York City, Steve Hiller is a U.S. Marine fighter pilot on leave in Los Angeles, and Russell Case is a drunken redneck who flies crop dusters. They all have families and they all have problems, but we'll get to that later. The first act follows the characters as they respond to the sudden presence of alien spaceships above their cities. Some people panic, some people think it's a blessing, and some are uncertain. The president is convinced not to evacuate the threatened cities, but to attempt communication with the aliens. Steve gets called back into duty, leaving his girlfriend and her son, and Boomer, behind in LA. But most importantly, David decodes the secret message the aliens have hidden in Earth's satellites. It's a countdown to when the aliens blow us up! Ah! Thankfully, his ex-wife is the communications director for the president, so she's able to get him and his dad into the White House so they can sound the alarm. The president orders the evacuation and flees on Air Force One, but it's too late for most people. DC, New York, and LA get blown to smithereens, and Boomer just barely survives. This is the end of the first act. All our characters are now set on their mission, to fight back against the aliens and survive. Throughout the second act, July 3rd, they react to the alien attacks. Air Force One lands at Area 51, where the team finds out that all the Roswell UFO conspiracies are real, which is a surprise even to the president. Steve's fighter squadron goes up against the spaceship that destroyed LA, and they get obliterated because the aliens have force fields. But Steve survives and manages to capture an unconscious alien. Steve's girlfriend, Jasmine, gets a hold of a truck and goes through the ruins of LA rescuing survivors, including the wounded First Lady. Russell and a bunch of other fleeing rednecks run into Steve with his captive alien in the desert, and he directs them all to Area 51, where all our protagonists meet up. There, the scientists and the president try to communicate with the alien, but it makes it clear that all it wants is to kill them and take their resources. So the president gives the order to
Nuke 'em. Let's nuke the bastards.
But it doesn't work because the aliens have nuke-proof shields. Meanwhile, Steve borrows a helicopter and goes back to LA to rescue Jasmine and the First Lady, and Boomer. But it's too late for the First Lady, she dies of her wounds. Everything is now at the lowest it can be, which is how you know it's the end of the second act. The nuclear counterattack has failed, the aliens are continuing to blow up the world's major cities, no one has any idea how to stop them, and one is currently headed right for Area 51. Until David has an idea. Aha! A ray of hope! It must be the beginning of the third act. He'll use the aliens' connection to our satellites to give them a computer virus that shuts off their force fields. But to do that, he'll need to get inside the giant mothership floating in space. Thankfully, there's a decommissioned UFO in Area 51, and Steve knows how to fly it. So everyone rallies around this desperate plan, the rest of the sorry world gets told not to worry because the good old USA's got this, and David and Steve fly to space in the UFO. They get into the mothership and plant the virus, while the president leads a team of fighter pilots against the nearest ship. The shields go down, but the fighter jets run out of missiles to take down the ship. Until Russell, the drunken redneck, heroically flies his plane into the ship and blows it to hell. David and Steve plant a nuke in the mothership and flee just in time. The rest of the world takes this opportunity to shoot down the other ships, and our heroes arrive back at Area 51 to celebrate their victory. And Boomer's okay. This is about as solid an example of 3-act storytelling as you can get. First act, the story is kicked off. Second act, the protagonists react and fail. Third act, the protagonists succeed. These are the beats that make up the spine of 95% of every movie you've ever seen, and Independence Day hits them all. But that's not what makes a movie great, right? Just conforming to 3-act structure? Some of the crappiest movies ever made conform to 3-act structure. A monkey could write a script that conforms to 3-act structure. No, what we care about is the characters. Who is this movie about? Do we like these people? More importantly, how do they change? Good storytelling is often about character arcs. How the characters go from one place to another emotionally. How they overcome their flaws, how they become their best selves. Does Independence Day do this? Let's examine our 4 protagonists. President Thomas Whitmore, David Levinson, Captain Stephen Hiller, and Russell Case. We'll start with the president. This is how we're introduced to him.
I have a confession to make. I'm sleeping next to a beautiful young brunette.
You didn't let her stay up all night watching TV, did you?
Immediately, we're given a reason to like him. Unlike the actual president at time of production, he's not a slick philanderer, but an honest family man. But he has a problem. His approval ratings are low, and this talking head gives us a reason why.
They elected a warrior and they got a wimp.
The first act demonstrates this flaw. Rather than take decisive action to evacuate DC, New York, and LA, the president listens to his defense secretary, waits things out, and hopes the aliens are friendly. And because of that, millions of his people are killed. Throughout the second act, he tries to reassert his leadership, but is stymied repeatedly. His nuclear counterattack fails, and his wife dies. But in the third act, he hears David's wild plan, and when his weaselly defense secretary tries to shoot it down, the president fires him and goes forth with a bold, decisive action. He gives his awesome speech, and then he does this.
I'm a combat pilot, Will. I belong in the air.
By the end of the movie, he becomes the president he was always meant to be. A strong leader who takes command, makes bold choices, and leads from the front. That's an arc. David is also a character who overcomes his weaknesses to become his best self. He's a genius, but he's an underachiever who's never found a place in the world where he can make a difference. It cost him his relationship with his ex-wife when she got an opportunity to rise up in the world, and he seemed content to stay where he was. But in this moment, he manages to be the one person on Earth who can decode the alien message, and at the end of the film, he comes up with a plan to save the world. And he gets back together with his ex, because he's now a person she can be proud of. That's an arc. Let's move on to Steve. We like him because he's Will Smith in the mid-90s, when Will Smith was the coolest human being to ever live.
But you are not as charming as you think you are, sir.
Yes, I am.
Like all motivated protagonists, he has a thing he wants, to fly the space shuttle. And he has an obstacle standing in his way of that.
Man, you're never gonna get to fly the space shuttle if you marry a stripper.
He's been meaning to propose for some time, but he's dragging his feet because of what it might do to his career. So he's got a dilemma: follow his dreams or be true to his woman. The answer is both. Steve gets a chance to fly an actual alien spaceship into space to save the world, but before he sets off, he finally marries Jasmine. He gets to be his best self with no compromises. Now, this isn't an exceptionally complex arc, Steve doesn't have to undergo any internal change to get what he wants, but it is an arc nonetheless. He has his want, he has his need, he gets both. And for Russell, his character flaw is that he's a drunken loser and a shitty father. He believes he was abducted by aliens decades ago, and the film never makes it clear if that was true or if he's just nuts. But either way, he gets his chance to stick it to the aliens and to prove himself worthy in his son's eye. That's an arc. So, that's 4 arcs for our 4 leads. Are they Shakespearean in their depth and complexity? No, but they're functional. We enjoy these characters, we enjoy watching them succeed at their goals. It rings true when they achieve what they set out to achieve. Those are our protagonists. What about our antagonists? Well, they don't have a lot of personality, and their motivation is very simple: kill all humans. But what they do have is a ton of presence. The whole first act of the film is about building them up, creating unease and fear around them. Look at this image of their ship hanging over New York. That's an iconic image for a reason. Just looking at them makes them feel immensely powerful and dangerous. We viscerally feel the threat they represent. Sometimes that's all a villain needs. Okay, but good movies aren't just about characters going through a plot. Good movies are about something. They have themes. Some may disagree on this point, but most writers like to have their movie mean something. What does Independence Day mean? Like its boilerplate plot and simple character arcs, the theme of Independence Day is not particularly complex. But it's there if you look for it, and it doesn't deviate from that theme. Independence Day is a film that wants to sell us on the idea that crisis brings the best out of people. It's a fundamentally hopeful film that shows us a cast of characters and a whole planet that rises to an extreme challenge and beats it. All 4 main character arcs reflect this. President Whitmore becomes the leader he was meant to be. David goes from an underachiever to the genius who saves the planet. Steve gets to be the pilot he wants to be and the husband and stepfather he needs to be. Russell Case gets to be a hero instead of a drunken slob. And this is reflected elsewhere. Jasmine responds to the destruction of her city by doing her best to save as many people as possible. David's father rediscovers his faith. But the theme extends to humanity as a whole. The failed nuclear attack represents a low point in the story, not just because it doesn't harm the aliens, but because, as David warns, it represents the destructive tendencies of the human race. It's a fear-based response that leads to more deaths and the pollution of more of our damaged planet. It's the worst of humanity coming out. But David's last-ditch plan and the mad global scramble to see it done represents humanity at its best. It requires courage and cooperation. Listen to the president's speech.
We can't be consumed by our petty differences anymore. We will be united in our common interest.
The conclusion of the film is not just a victory for our individual heroes, but for the entire world in working together to overcome a greater foe. This is a movie that sets out to make you feel good to be a human, and it succeeds. But movies are also entertainment. They can have a tight plot and clear character arc and a theme and still fail if they're boring. Is Independence Day fun to watch? Fuck yes! This movie rules! You got the Empire State Building going boom, you got Will Smith punching an alien in the face, you got the President of the United States flying a fighter jet, you got all sorts of pew pew and zoom and boom! This is a proud popcorn movie. It exists to be a thrilling special effects spectacle, and it's one of the best of its kind. Look at that shot! Rad as hell! Listen to the film's final line.
Didn't I promise you fireworks?
That's what this movie is, folks. It's a fireworks show for the 4th of July. You're supposed to go ooh and ah as the big things blow up. But let's step back a minute. Critics of this movie don't say it doesn't have a clear plot. They don't say it doesn't have character arcs. They don't say it doesn't have a theme or that it's boring. They say that it's stupid. Is it stupid? Yes! This movie is the dumbest thing ever put on screen. The alien computers can get infected by a mid-90s computer virus. Vivica A. Fox and the kid and the dog survive an explosion that wipes out LA by hiding in a closet. Will Smith knows exactly how to get to Area 51 because he saw it out of the corner of his eye for a second while in a dogfight that takes him from LA to Nevada. Then he steals a military helicopter by doing this.
Look, I got something I gotta handle. I'm just borrowing it. No, you're not, sir. Do you really want to shoot me? Just tell him I hit you.
And then he claims he knows how to fly an alien spacecraft because he saw it move during the dogfight. And then the goddamn President of the United States gets in a fighter jet and leads an attack on an alien ship. No president would ever do that. Okay, Joe Biden might, but only if he was sundowning.
I belong in the air, Jack.
Mr. President, you were never a combat pilot and there are no aliens. Step away from the plane.
Let's bring the fight to these goblins.
This movie is dumb, dumb, dumb. It doesn't ask a single thought from its audience. Everything is surface level. Everything is simple. Everything is big and loud and appealing to the lowest common denominator. But so what? Yeah, the movie's stupid, but does that really represent a flaw in it? Did the filmmakers set out to make a movie that was smart and complex, and they failed? Most importantly, would the movie be better if it wasn't stupid? Personally, I don't think it would. I think it would be worse. Think about what this movie would have to do if it took itself seriously. First of all, it would be a bummer. Tens, if not hundreds of millions of people are killed in this film. Major cities, centers of life and history and humanity are destroyed. The entire human race is at risk of extermination. This is how Will Smith responds to the destruction of his city and the possible death of his girlfriend.
No, sir. Just a little anxious to get up there and whoop E.T.'s ass, that's all.
This is how he responds to the deaths of all his friends and a physical encounter with a hostile alien.
That's what I call a close encounter.
This is how he responds to finding his girlfriend barely hanging on to life in a ruined city.
You know I like to make an entrance.
An intelligent film couldn't have that. An intelligent film would force us to reckon with all that loss. Its characters would be traumatized and terrified. There would be no time for quips. There would be no thrill in the action scenes, just grim tension. It would be a film weighed down by the inexpressible weight of mass death, a slaughter of human beings greater than the Second World War. And it would have to deal with the existential questions of what it means to know that we're not alone in the universe, and that the other things want us dead. It would be a cosmic horror about the realization that everything we are, everything we have been, and everything we can be wiped away by an exponentially more powerful force that cares nothing for us. It would be a film more along the lines of the original Gojira, or Spielberg's War of the Worlds. It would be a somber film about the casual disregard that the universe has for that life we consider so special. Would that be a good film? Maybe. But it wouldn't be this film. This is a popcorn movie. It's a fireworks show. That is the intention with which it was made. If it were thoughtful enough to really reckon with its ideas, it couldn't be that. To be the spectacle it is, it kinda needs to be dumb enough that the audience can feel a step removed from it. Its characters need to act like characters, not real people dealing with unimaginable tragedy. Its destruction needs to be treated as spectacle rather than mass human death. Its misery needs to be minimized, and its triumph needs to be magnified beyond a realistic degree. The audience needs to understand that this is movie world, not the real world that is being destroyed. Will Smith needs to quip. The president needs to get in a fighter jet. Boomer needs to survive. Independence Day is inarguably a dumb film. But for the life of me, I can't think of a single thing that it does wrong. I can't think of a beat it misses, of a goal it fails to achieve. It does every single thing it sets out to do. Is that not how we should evaluate a piece of art? And we know it's not easy to do because Roland Emmerich has repeatedly failed to do it again. All his other big disaster movies are boring and ugly and unpleasant. Even his Independence Day sequel sucks compared to the first one. Even trash entertainment still needs to be made right in order to be entertaining. Independence Day was made right. Its stupidity was not a mistake. It's the point. So, if you're like me, you'll give it another watch this 4th of July. It's not smart, but you gotta love it. And what better celebration of our country is there than that?